Let me start recording. Here she is. There you are.
Oh my goodness. Apologies, everyone.
That's okay. We've got people from Belfast, Ireland with us today. Isn't that
Awesome.
exciting?
That is really cool. We
Yes.
international gathering, don't we, Dr. Sally?
Yes, we do. And we are now recording, and I haven't made any opening announcements. Linda is here, and her daughter Carol is also here. Um, so I'm going to really sort of get formally started by saying welcome, welcome to everyone who's joining us. It will be recorded. It is being recorded now. There'll be a replay. All you have to do is DM on LinkedIn, and you'll get the replay. And today we're using the microbiome. We're talking about how the gut microbiome helps prevent dementia, and also if we don't take care of our gut, how it could add to having dementia as well.
Yep.
So I'm so glad to have um, Claire George. Claire is a healthy habits coach. Not originally, can't say originally. Nobody's ever originally. She was from the UK and now she's moved to Florida. And so she's getting sunshine, and it's even sunshining in Ireland today. Amazing. Belfast has some sunshine.
Oh yeah, no, I think this is it, isn't it? It's just wonderful. Sunshine and sunshine energy. It's brilliant. I've been getting into that, but today's topic on dementia and preventing it and how involved our gut health habits are when it comes to cognitive decline. Like we what's that got to do with it? And I found this so often in my coaching group. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to exploring this and allowing more and more people to understand the connections on this really important topic.
Oh, yes. And so I'm going to start really simple because, we've been doing this for 4 series and we sort of built up a body of knowledge. But I'm going to start really simply with just defining what a microbiome is. We use the word micro for little. Biome, of course, means of life. And we have virtually microbiomes all over our cells, hair, eyes, eyelashes, anywhere there's a crevice that has moisture inside our gut, actually our skin, everywhere. We have lots of wonderful critters and to over a trillion microbes, fungi, bacteria, all over our bodies, and they help us metabolize some of our nutrients so that we get the best possible nutrients. And so we're interactive. We're the host, and we're going to try to do things that help our critters do the best for us. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship.
Yeah, it sure is. And this is what is so brilliant about recognizing the role that you play as a a person in your own life, in your own health and your gut biome. So yeah, it's really cool that what I do or don't do, or what I eat, don't eat, and all these different elements of our daily life really make a difference to what's going on inside of us in our gut and just how easy or difficult it is for those helpful microbes and little critters, as Dr. Sally would say, how difficult or easy are we making it for the good helpful ones to thrive, because that's what we want to do, because when they thrive, we thrive. It is a two-way. We rely on them to do lots of different jobs inside our body systems, and they rely on us to provide a nice home. So yeah, it's kind of getting your head around that and seeing it as like it's a give and take. They give you so much more, I think, than we need to give them. So yeah, it's a really cool thing.
Yes, and because we have this thing called the gut-brain axis, our brain is talking to our gut's talking to our brain. It's back and forth, bidirectional. And I know people on this recording have had the experience of having a gut instinct about someone, like you meet someone and you immediately say, this is a really good person, or immediately say, I don't know what it is, but I I need to go away. I need to get away from this person. We are influenced all the time by what goes on down in our gut. There's actually a neural network that starts actually from your brain all the way down your digestive system and all the way through it. The neural network is so amazing because it's carrying neurotransmitters back and forth. Our little sweet little gut is making those wonderful neurotransmitters for us, serotonin, dopamine, GABA, a whole bunch of things, and giving them to our brain so that we feel better. If our gut is out of sync, it's called dysbiosis. If it's out of sync and it's not doing well, then we get like brain fog. We can feel anxious. We can feel um, just out of sorts. And it affects so many hormones and our immune system on so many different levels. It's mind-boggling.
It sure is. And I think that's what is one of the biggest surprises is like, what? So hold on a minute. I've got neurons and sort of all this sort of sort of transmitters and neurotransmitters and these different aspects of our our nervous system is in my gut. And so then it starts to make sense, this whole gut instinct thing, like, oh, well, yeah, I've got senses and instincts going on down there that then get fed up. But also, so as you mentioned, Dr. Sally, just so many other sort of aspects of our health and balancing our health as a system that the brain really, it's the control center. But it requires and it relies, just as we're relying on those critters to kind of do some cleaning up on the inside for us, our brain relies on our gut to send it the information as to what is happening in all the different areas of our environment and the internal environment as well. So yeah, it's really, really cool. And we should mention that if you're like, oh, well, why haven't I heard about this? It's literally only in the last sort of almost year or so that that scientists and evidence has really been able to categorically identify the ways and patterns and processes of these neural pathways within the gut-brain connections. It's very recent. It doesn't make it, what's the word? Woo-woo. But that's why you may not have heard of it before. So I think that's an important thing to note.
Yes, and you'll hear it more and more. They're even selling shampoo to improve your hair microbiome. Well, yeah, we have a microbiome on our eyelashes. We have little critters that live on our eyelashes. We have little critters that live in our pores and on our skin. Um, and so when we think about it, there's actually more critters that have a non-human DNA on us than we are human DNA. Now think about that for a second. We're mostly aliens, not humans. And the aliens create such good things for us. Like when we feed our little aliens down there, our good critters, as I call them, we give them the kind of food that they like to process for us. Because sometimes there's certain things that we eat that our gut, we as a human can't process. The critters take it, metabolize it. It becomes food for them, and their metabolites, as I say, it's microbiome poopy coming from the little baby microbiome down there. And it actually can change what genes open or get turned off. Now that's a pretty powerful environment.
It sure is. And I think it's a good moment to mention also that really at the heart of the conversation around anything to do with gut health and microbiomes and critters and different organisms living on us, amongst us, within us, that really we're talking about nature. We're talking about biology of nature. And this is why gut health is such a broad and holistic sort of space to be, trying to improve or to be working in as Dr. Sally and I are. So that is just to explain that, you're interconnected to, each biome of every living organism or surface. It's interconnected with one another, and we share biomes and with different, sort of spheres of nature. And so I just really want to point out that just like in nature, sort of plants, animals, sunlight, water, rain, or like these are so fundamental to life and to thriving as an organism, as they are for us as humans. And so it's recognizing that the more we can become more connected with nature and respect the nature of ourselves and our individual health, but also the health of those different biomes, that we're living within and connected to, the more we will amplify our own health journey. And I think this is the part that, as you know, Dr. Sally, I love talking about, why we're talking about circadian rhythms and gut, or why we're talking about all these different aspects of the earth, of nature, and sort of, spiritual elements as well that we don't yet understand, but definitely affect our gut health.
Yes, and also you brought up some wonderful things about the rhythm of the earth, the rhythm of the nature, the rhythm of our bodies, and the balance that we can create by eating the proper foods. And the second one is getting proper sleep, because that can really impact us on such a very, very deep level. And when we do all those things, we're out in nature, we've got good nutrition, we're breathing fresh air. I think as a people, we've actually forgotten how to breathe. We sort of hold our breath, we have shallow breathing. We're a little bit afraid and tentative in certain circumstances, but allowing ourselves to get into the rhythm of breathing and expressing ourselves, through even like subliminally. We have so many antennae that reach out. I call it our spidey sense, that reach out through our gut, that gives us information. Is this a safe place? Is it not a safe place? So, what can we do to help our um, gut critters? What can we help them to do to be more healthy, therefore making us more healthy? What can we do?
Yeah, and I think this is it. And I think, expanding on that, like the words, think about the words and how you attach meaning to the words, especially nutrition and diet. Do you think of those two words as purely food? Because they're not. Nutrition in nature is about air. It's about, the quality of air you breathe. Well, what is and it's about, the water and hydration. These are more fundamental, it could be argued, than food for life and for thriving. And so it's recognizing that diet and nutrition is more than just food, though obviously food is the biggest component for us, as humans. But recognizing that how you use those words. And so I think the saying is it's something like we can live 65, 70 days without food, a few days, I don't know, 5 days without water, and a few minutes without air. So it's recognizing that they are
Mhm.
all essential nutrients, and respecting that we've got this environment around our health that we need to kind of optimize in these different ways. But then maybe we can switch into like diet and nutrition for your brain and for your cognition and for the quality of your cognitive, sort of processes up there, all that mental stuff, all that thinking and memories and all that stuff that's going to be obviously, what we're going to be focused on more today is what is the diet, what's the nutrition needs of your brain and your mental capacity in order to be able to, help your gut thrive and help that, sort of prevent, cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's, and that's what I believe we're going to be getting into, as sort of in this particular masterclass.
Yes, and here's a commercial. I have a book called Preventing Dementia: Gentle Lifestyle Changes. It's both a Kindle and a paperback. And if any of you have parents, Father's Day is coming up. It's a short book. I kept it really simple. I kept it just like, what are the actual habits day by day that can start us on our journey to helping prevent dementia in so many different ways and so many different levels. But it really starts from the inside out. And our insides, what we are given from what we give to the microbiome, The critters create things, they give it back to us. Some of them help our brain, some of them help our hormonal system, some of them help our immune system. But if we're not really taking care of our gut health, then it's not going to help us take care of our brain. And long term, that could be cumulative. And when I say cumulative, that could mean that things could build up within the brain. We talk about amyloid plaques in Alzheimer's. We talk about Alzheimer's being um, a type of metabolic illness, sort of like diabetes 2. And some people even label Alzheimer's as diabetes 3 because it has a metabolic component to it. And also, I want to mention that Claire George is an expert on this particular subject. She's probably coached thousands of people in the UK how to learn how to prevent diabetes, especially type 2.
Mhm.
But along with that, we're also preventing dementia because the very things that prevent these kind of metabolic illnesses within our cells, which are reversible. Hello, it's reversible. So I'd like for Claire to sort of give us another little overview of what that journey is of reversing part 2 and how we don't get to part 3.
Well, yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? And I think your book and everybody, do reach out and get a copy. It's amazing, and it is really doable and readable, doable. It's getting, it's Dr. Sally has this way of using all those years of practice, and with patients, different patients and people and clients, and helping them. And very many, I believe, not all, but sort of many of the people that you've helped and supported over the years are of that older senior sort of bracket. And I should mention also, in addition to my health coaching to prevent type 2 diabetes as an NHS contracted health coach. Yeah, and it was to thousands, and it's what really leaned me into this space around gut health a couple of years ago, and because I recognized that the book and the program was all about cutting carbs and cutting sugars, but really truly our health is a system. And like I come back that whole diet, like what is my diet, not just what food am I eating, though that is a cornerstone habit, of course, and it's going to be the most important one if I'm trying to help somebody in my community prevent type 2 diabetes. But at the same time, it is recognizing that we've got to start to learn to respect our bodies and learn to love our bodies and give them what they need. And so, yeah, I definitely think that taking that, having that practice, you with your community, Dr. Sally, myself with my coaching groups and people. And I was going to mention actually that prior to that coaching experience, I worked at a medical practice in the UK, a GP practice, for those of you who are that way, and as a health support and person, and in health psychology, because I have a master's in health psychology, which is behavior change for health, and it's all about the wider determinants of your health. Anyway, but in that practice, I was a community care coordinator, and literally nearly 1,000 people I helped who were sort of 60s to 90s years of age, and very, very many of them were experiencing dementia or were caregivers of people living with dementia. And so that was a very that's a space that I'm really familiar with, feel a lot of love, and a lot of my grandfather had vascular dementia. And yeah, so I feel really connected to this space. And I did do a research project developing an ICT tool when I was at Derby University in the UK, developing an ICT tool for caregivers of people living with dementia. So these are just to give you a bit of a sense of my connection with the topic today, besides the gut health aspect. And I think, though, that really what we need to kind of recognize is that cognitive decline and the vibrancy, the vitality of our cells at cellular level, whether that's in our mind or in another part of our body, is about our metabolic health fundamentally. It is about those nutrients, that diet that we're feeding our cells, and is it optimizing? Is it enough? Are we malnourished? 75% of people over the age of 55 in the UK are malnourished. It's something like 60% of over 65-year-olds have, depletion of iron, B vitamins, B12,
B12.
the vitamin D deficiencies. I'm sure this is familiar to some extent with those of you, sharing this class today. And so it's just sort of, again, thinking of nutrition and diet for all the different tiny components that are needed to build all the different building blocks of our body and our brain. And so in terms of our brain, there are some very, very specific foods that are particularly beneficial, particularly powerful. And there is actually, I can signpost you all to it's called the Antidepressant Food Scale, the AFS. If you Google that, you will find it. There's 50 foods that are listed on that, and a top 10 of foods that are just like 10x the power of brain growth, of neuron growth. Mm-hmm. So, optimizing those foods are going to really help you optimize. So that is number one. And number two is shellfish like oysters, and offal, such as, say, I don't know, liver pate. That's up at number 1 and 2. But then you've got your green leafy vegetables and calciferous vegetables. But then there's groups that might surprise you, like eggs, nuts and seeds. How many of my coaching community do I bring over to the dark side of the fabulous tiny micro world of nuts and seeds, and just what powerhouses they are for your health, and especially for brain health, because 70% of your brain is fat, and the fat plays a big part. So many in my coaching community over the age of 60, over the age of 50 really, but over the age of 60, they've had 3 decades of messaging that fat is bad. And this is a real challenge for me as a health coach to overcome, because it's so wrong. It's so wrong. And we've been told carbs are good. Eat your pasta, eat your potatoes. For decades, your brain has been told that. And then all of a sudden, you're made to feel kind of like bad or something, or guilt or shame that you have a high carb diet, when the whole food industry and the whole healthcare system messaging for decades has encouraged you, made it easy for you, to have the diet that you have today. And so I always start off with the sense of, do recognize that, yes, ultimately you choose what you eat, but there's a lot of factors at play, and that there's no reason, and there's no benefit, obviously, to feeling any sort of sense of guilt and shame. So that sense of like, oh, I'm just going to learn about what I can do, what is possible, and the direction to go in. And that's why I really encourage anyone listening who wants to start optimizing their diet and their nutrition for brain health. Begin by starting to understand that the 3 most important components for metabolic health are protein, fiber, and healthy fats. And if you start
protein, fiber, and healthy fats.
Yeah. And so if you begin, and I talk about first dominoes with your breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen or prince, and dinner like a pauper. If you start to take that approach, you will start to help your gut health, because you'll give that digestion a rest. We're going to get into sleep. We're going to get into why that's so important in a moment. But just to finish this sort of area of food and food items to optimize brain health, we really have got to optimize those 3. And we've also got to make sure that we absorb them, because it's one thing to eat more protein, but that doesn't mean you're absorbing more iron. It doesn't mean you're absorbing more of these wonderful nutrients. Absorption is about gut health, and gut health is about balance, as Dr. Sally said. And so recognizing that I've got to kind of play with this, and I've got to move and shift. It's not a eat this diet, everything will be fine, because it depends where your starting point is, but definitely recognizing that the more you shift your eating behaviors and habits towards that regular eating, that breakfast is the most important meal of your day to optimize that protein, fiber, and healthy fats. And then the main North Star, as I call it in all my happy gut coaching, is eat more plants and eat less processed. So that's the final sort of, that's the kind of the completion tip that I would give to you all today, is to really, really create variety. Every time you go to choose, I don't know, the foods in your supermarket shop, or every time you go to choose what to eat for dinner, or you're just finishing up your meal and you're about to put it on your plate, think, can I add just one more plant? Is there some way I could add a piece of nature to this scene? Could I, the black pepper, a squidge of lemon juice? Could I have a cup of herbal tea and an infusion tea to go with it? How can I add more plants? Tiny is mighty. It doesn't have to be plates of broccoli. But recognizing that variety is a spice to a healthy gut life, because each of those little microbe families, each one of variety or species, if you like, has different preferences. And just like you have a favorite, a favorite treat dish, so do they. And for one, it might be pomegranates. For another, it might be Brussels sprouts. For another, who knows, green beans. The point is, that's why the whole eat a rainbow and this variety, because the more textures and colors of the plants, it represents a different type of micronutrient, phytonutrients, polyphenols are represented by those different colors and textures and sizes and looks. And so, have an interesting wardrobe to your plants, right?
Yes.
So you
Yeah.
might be eating 5 a day, but are you eating the same 5? And are they the same 5 vegetables that you buy every week in the supermarket? The ideal, according to Zoe Nutrition and the experts at King's College London, is to aim for 30 a week. I personally aim for 30 a day. That doesn't include my micros, my teas, my herbs, my spices. I aim for 50 a day, including those. So that's what I aim for. North Star. There's no rules. It's your life.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
in a nutshell what I'd say are the biggest takeaways of what to eat for brain health.
And also, too, remember, we don't all start out where Claire is now, because she has been adding on and learning and guiding her own self through this journey. And we might start with maybe 5 or 10, maybe some new things. It's sort of like, if some of you, I know that Carol has had children. I don't know about Maureen yet, but when we start out babies with a new type of food, we don't just give them all that new food like at once, because they'll go, what is this? And their little gut doesn't know what it is and hasn't recognized it yet. So we start out little, tiny little teaspoons. We get them used to the taste, used to the texture, and then through a day's worth of thinking about it, and then we stop, and then we start again. And the more we do that, the more the baby gets used to certain kinds of vegetables. Sort of like us. I love Brussels sprouts, and I have people in my circle of friends who's go, Brussels sprouts. I say, you can do so many things with them. You can peel them, put some oil and rosemary on them and bake them, and they're like potato chips. And they're good for you. And they said, oh, we never thought of that. They're used to having Brussels sprouts cooked to a mush in some cafeteria somewhere where no one has had the creativity to actually use it as a really good food. So when you go to the grocery store, start small, pick something you've never had before. How about trying a dragon fruit? Or how about having a kiwi or an artichoke? Those are all kind of things I learned to eat way into my 30s, because we didn't have those things where I grew up. I'd never even seen an artichoke until I was about 35. So it's not too late to start adding these wonderful things to your um, daily intake of nutrition. And we're thinking of that we are finally tuned race cars. Pick whatever you want. Today, I'll be maybe a Maserati today. When I pull up my Maserati to the gas station, what kind of gas am I going to put in it? Am I going to do the like cheapest one? Nope. I'm going to have optimal performance from a Maserati. And we all are finely tuned race cars on many levels, from the mitochondria that creates the energy in our cells to how we think about brain health. So every time you put something in your mouth, you say, am I helping my Maserati or am I slowing it down? It's an easy one to think about.
Yeah, and you raise such good points there. I love it. I love thinking of my, what is it? The old saying that my body is a temple. I always find that a little too austere for me, a little too hot.
Mhm.
But I love that I'm a sports car. Yeah, why not? But to go back to your point about little and often and your starting point, absolutely. You cannot get anywhere if you get in your car and you get in that sports car that you've got. You can't get anywhere with the sat nav if you only know the destination. Oh, I want to eat 30 plants a day, but you don't know what you're doing now. You've got to know your start, and we've got to start small and little, and to absolutely. I have no idea what I was eating a couple of years ago. I know it was nothing like 30 plants a day. I know that I took my breakfast bowl, which kind of looks the same. It sort of looks like granola, but there's no granola in it anymore. But it started off, and for the last 15 years, granola, yogurt, and berries, fruit. That's basically what I've eaten. Thought that's super healthy. And it was, except for the fact that the granola I was choosing was about 16% sugar and
Mhm.
about and 70% carbs, which is more sugar once it's actually digested in your gut. It's just glucose, all of it,
Mhm.
So it's recognizing, oh, so now I've got a problem. I like my breakfast. I've had it for 15 years. I don't want to change that. How can I shift the balance over to that protein, fiber, and healthy fats? And so that's when I started introducing the nuts, the seeds, ground nuts, different kinds of, instead of a regular. Sometimes I do have yogurt, but there is the option of not having a non-dairy yogurt, for example, or
Mhm.
optimizing the yogurt to be a super high protein yogurt might be another option, where you play with the ratios of the nutrients within that breakfast bowl. And so that's very much how I did. And I would say, how did I do that? I thought about it. So what are we doing when we think about it? We're raising our awareness, we're paying attention to what we're doing and what we want to change. And that's when we can start to build the steps to create that habit change. And really, most habits are really supported when we track them. You'll really get more movement and motivation and a momentum happening when you track. Just like steps, you get one of them phones, it says you've done, I
Mhm.
don't know, you just do one more walk up your stairs and you'll get your ring and you're like, oh, I've got to do it. So it's kind of like that, right? So definitely tracking. So what would that look like? Oh, I don't know, just putting it in your phone, or a little diary, or a little, your to-do list, just a little jot, like a little doodle on the side, like how many plants did I have, and just count them up. And it's kind of fun. And then I really recommend to my coaching communities playing that within families, and getting a little socially competitive. I'm a tennis player.
Yes.
There's nothing like a bit of social competitive fun to get you really into your habits, and get you doing them. And so less of this, like, I must and I've got to, and more of this, I wonder what I could do, or let's see what's possible,
I'm going
and
to win. I'm going to win this time.
so definitely encourage that. And then the point I would sort of, come back to is this sense of these healthy fats, so for the brain specifically, and identifying whether you have some old mindset shifts, and mindsets that you need to shift, and thought patterns around what you're, well, I can't, if I can't have cereal and I can't have bread, how can I have breakfast? I mean, we're Westerners. 95% of Western diets, breakfast is 70% carbs or more. That's the norm, right? So to break away from that is not going to be easy initially. It's not going to feel easy, that's for sure. So allowing for that and just going, how can I just shift the needle? 1% less carbs a day. I'll just have a little less. So instead of having my normal size of porridge, oatmeal, I'll have a half size or a size I give, and I'll try and get to the point where I'll have a portion size that is what I give to a toddler, to a little small child, instead of my adult portion. I've now switched the ratio, and instead of, obviously I've got less, but I'm hungry. I need that breakfast like a king, right? So I'm going to top it up with that high protein yogurt. I'm going to top it. I'm going to sprinkle some, I'm going to grate. I always talk about grating is great. I'm going to grate a Brazil nut on top of my Weetabix. I'm going to go from 2 Weetabix to 1. I'm going to go from 2 slices of toast to 1 slice of toast, and I'm going to put an egg on it. I'm going to, like, there's ways of you to play with this so that it doesn't mean eating foods that you don't want to eat, because that is not sustainable. You are not going to stick with it. The moment you feel you're like getting somewhere with it, you go, oh, I can rest now. And then you go back to your old habits, your old behaviors, and your old health situation that you want to improve. So that's what I really recommend. Like, go easy on yourself. Love yourself, all habits begin with self-care, and that sense of you're just trying to do a little bit better. You're just 1% a day. I'm just going to cut those carbs a little bit, those sugars a little bit, add in, throw in where I can, and I'm going to see where this takes me. But do recognize, and one final tip on, you mentioned, Dr. Sally, about don't go overwhelm yourself with lots of new vegetables. And it's like, oh, what do I do with them? And we always, for some reason, this is what I find of coaching thousands, is that everyone always, well, first of all, they don't label cereal as carbs. But second, they always seem to, when it comes to plants, they think of that produce aisle in the supermarket and they've got to buy more from that. But what I really, really encourage you to consider is money, because it is important to us all. And if we go and spend money on a bunch of, I don't know, aubergines and artichokes, and we get them home and they sit in our fridge, don't they, at the bottom of our fridge. And oh, what are we going to do? Oh, I've done it myself. I still do it sometimes, to be fair. I still, those veggies that I buy that are good for me, but I don't love them. They're okay. And they sit at the bottom of the fridge. And so what I really recommend is only add one fresh, like one per shop, but you're going up. So say you normally buy 5 vegetables, you're going to go to 6 vegetables, and the following week to 7. And so, you'll get to a point where you don't need to keep adding, but it'll take a few months. And by that time, you'll have an established habit. It'll just be automatic. And that you'll pick variety and that you'll rotate it, But what I really recommend to get away from wasting money and time and then feeling guilty that you've thrown away that aubergine in the compost bin, what I really recommend is using your freezer and your store cupboard and setting them up for success. And so that would look like cans of 5, 6, 7 different kinds of beans: kidney, lima, cannellini, black beans, whatever, fava, whatever. 5 different kinds of grains. Why do we only eat rice? No need. I could eat rice. I could eat quinoa. I could eat
Amaranth.
Amaranth. I can eat farro. I can eat, and so, you're getting the lentils, all 13 essential amino acids, amazing source of protein. And again, these tiny things, they're really packed with wealth. But then in the freezer, so a lot of fresh fruit and vegetables. I've just moved, as you mentioned, to Florida. It's so much more expensive here than the UK, and I thought the UK could be expensive. And I was a little girl for your guide, because I don't like getting tempted, shall we say, by the big brandy fancy supermarkets with all that packaging. That processed food ends up going in my trolley a lot more often in those supermarkets than when I go to the simple standard ones. But anyway, but here in Florida, so I went along to Trader Joe's, and sure enough, there was dragon fruit frozen. There's mango, so I bought dragon fruit, cherries, mangoes, all those like high end, if you like, tropical fruits, and I bought them frozen, 3/4 of them organic, cheaper, especially if you consider how much you actually have, because they've been all chopped and sorted out when they're in that frozen pack. So you're actually it's way cheaper to buy it, and they've been frozen at source. And the science research shows that the nutrients are more locked in typically. There would be occasional breaks to the rule, but as a rule, generally, that frozen produce that's frozen at source, like next to the fields, that's going to have higher density of nutrients. So again, it's that mind message that, oh, but fresh is better than frozen, fresh is better than canned, fresh is better. Not necessarily. But what the canned and the frozen and the dried offer you is time to use them, time to adapt them into you and integrate them into your day, into your cooking, into your foods, and into your life. And that then creates a space for you to be able to breathe. Like, you bought it, you've got it. I bought this 49% protein lupin flour that was grown in South America from a supermarket. And I wasn't using it. It sat at the back of my cupboard. So I got it out on my shelf, and because I'm trying to do this whole, like, bringing my attention and awareness to it to get me to use it. And I put that on the shelf and on the kitchen side, I should say. And then within 2 weeks, I used it. So again, it's using I didn't start going, oh, Claire, how stupid. You bought that, you haven't used it. What a waste of money, which is how I think many of us can go to. So it's recognizing, no, you're trying. You bought some lupin flour. Who does that? And recognizing every time you're thinking and acting, you are being a wonderful human trying to look after your health.
Yes, wonderful points. I also want to talk about how you can jumpstart this really healthy thing that we want to have going on by eating fermented foods. We have a whole array, and we have a whole array of ethnicity to work with. I live in a predominantly German community. They make their own sauerkraut. I love sauerkraut. I could eat a whole jar of sauerkraut. So does our gut. Our gut loves the fiber. It loves all the sort of like microbial fermentation things that have happened. Kefir is like milk that's fermented. You can buy it in the store. Just don't get the one that's got all the sugar in it and the funny, pretty little label with all the colors on it. Just go for the real kefir. You can make your own if you have a starter. If you like milk, I'm not a milk person, so I don't really use kefir that much, but it's very good for you, as well as kombucha. And kombucha may sound like a funny name. It's an organic thing. What would we call kombucha? Is it a fungi, a plant? What is it?
Kombucha. It's a
It
bacterium.
it's huge. When you grow it in your refrigerator, it's the size of a platter, and it gets these little pups or little babies that pop up, and then you take the babies and you can work them into fermentation, and then you make a drink out of it. I have given up being an artisan of organic foods. I used to do this in California. Now I basically go to an organic health food store and buy the kombucha done. It's already in a nice little bottle. I go, look, 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 look. Perfect. And of course, yogurt with um, different kind of live bacteria. They call them cultures, a live culture. And you should double check anytime you look for yogurt, live cultures. That's why you're really basically eating it to help restore and make your gut be as healthy as possible. The gut itself is very thin. It's almost like a one cell. If you think about if you ever eat a sausage and you see the casing the sausage is in and how really thin that is, that's the same in our gut. It's very thin. To me, it's a modern miracle that it doesn't like just fall apart. But if we get overstressed, if we eat a lot of sugar, if we do bad things to our gut, it will actually lose its integrity as a structure, and it will cause a little leak to happen. And the things that we're digesting can get through this little leak out into our whole system down here. And our white blood cells, our immune system will say, danger, danger. There's something over here that's not supposed to be here. And it'll come and try to clean it up. That's what we call inflammation. We get inflammation many, many ways. And having a leaky gut is one of them. We don't want that. We want a happy gut. We want to be able to eat our foods and know that we're sending the right things down to our helpers that live in our gut. So just the awareness that we have helpers in our gut sort of makes us think a little bit differently. Some people like get in moods and they grab what they call comfort food. Well, for the moment, mostly high glucose, highly processed foods. For the moment, it might be comforting, but tomorrow when you wake up, it won't be. You'll be in a brain fog. You'll be like, oh, I think I've just taken a drug. You did sugar, sugar, the biggest drug there is. And it's pushed on us in almost every single thing that we eat. So that's why we have to read labels.
Yeah.
So yes, we can jumpstart our process. We can jumpstart our fermentation foods, and help them to help our gut.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a couple of really key other areas for our gut health, right? Yes, we're talking about the gut, that then optimizing the gut so far. We've really covered the fundamental aspects of how to optimize your gut through the foods you're eating, food as medicine. But also what we need to kind of touch on now, I think, is like that space that you've mentioned, Dr. Sally, of stress and the role of stress and sleep, and these other sort of and inflammation, and the roles that those processes play, and factors play, and habits play in cognitive health. And so yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts about, let's touch on sleep, because I love your little story of the sleep sweepers.
Yes. Um, I know you've heard many, many times, if you want to make someone crazy, you stop them from sleeping. If you want to torture them, you stop them from sleeping. Because basically, we cannot make the neurotransmitters that we need. We can't do repairs in our body. We can't do that unless we sleep. And sleep is is one of the foundational pillars of a healthy person. So if you're not having enough good sleep and it's not really good rested sleep for extended period of time, then you might start getting other health problems. But at night, what sleep does for us, and I recommend that you do not eat after 8 p.m. because we got to rest the gut. We also have to go sleepy time. And whenever we're in a digestive mode, everything about in our body, the energy goes into digestion, right? So if we have a light pauper's supper, we stop eating at least by 8, and we lay down in a room that we have darkened and it's a little bit more quiet. And we get off our phones and anything that creates the blue light that can go into, these are blue light glasses. It keeps my computer from going into my brain and sort of messing with my the way that it works optimally. And so when you go to sleep, you get repairs. There's You've heard of the lymphatic system. You know what that is. Lymph gland, we got everything zooming around. It's part of our immune system. We also have this one, which is like you have to almost like sputter to say it's called the lymph with a G, lymphatic system, which is consists of all the fluids that bathe our brain and all the fluids that go down our spinal cord fluid. It's a system that flows like this. During the day, things happen. Cells die. We need like some little repair job, and we go to sleep. And while we're sleeping soundly, there's a little woman that comes out with a tiny little broom, and she's in her brain, and she sweeps all this debris away, all the things that we don't need anymore. It's maybe even some amyloid plaques. She helps repair and makes us a nice fresh brain for when we wake up in the morning. And so that's why sleep is so important. She won't come out unless you're sleeping. If you get up and uh, don't have a restful sleep, you don't get everything taken care of. Tomorrow, it will feel different for you. I can guarantee that. If you wake up from a good night's sleep and you go, wow, I feel so good. Oh, I've got my digestive system cleaned out. All those zombie cells are gone. We've got my whole lymphatic system cleaned out, and we're good to go. So that's important. That's the importance of sleep. But again, it's all interactive. It's not just one thing or one thing or one thing. Each thing impacts the next thing. So it's all this interconnection that we sort of think of when we're working on health.
Yeah, definitely. And that brings back to kind of full circle to what I mentioned right at the beginning of this class around fundamentally thinking of your gut health as a little garden of nature, and nature, sort of the ways in which the circadian rhythms, the light, the dark, the sun goes up, the sun goes down, and just how fundamental they are to your health. The less in sync
And
you are
yes,
with the change in out in nature. We have to remember that the human brain last had an upgrade, or whatever they call it. When you have with your computer, when you have it
yes, an update.
update was 50,000 years ago. But we've only had lights and concrete and all the rest, and computers for a couple of hundred, well, so decades, but a few hundred years,
Mhm.
and a couple of hundred years that we've had these sort of modern, I say modern living mucks us up. And so recognizing that for your gut health and your brain health, the closer you can get your day-to-day life, your 24-hour cycle in sync with nature, with light, with dark, with temperature going down at night for most of us on the planet. The temperature is lower, but yet we have homes that are 71 degrees constant. And my gut health has definitely been affected by my move to Florida, because it's in this aircon and I'm not used to aircon. My body is a system. And I'm suddenly sleeping and in aircon, and I'm not sleeping as well. I'm okay. I'm all right. I've got my habits, but I notice the difference. It's noticeable when you become very aware of your body and nature, and that 24-hour cycle of nature. You shift towards it with your different actions, like Dr. Sally was saying about when you finish eating. They seem small, like what difference is it going to make? 1 or 2 days here or there. No, it's not going to make a big difference. But most of us are in midlife and older that are in my community. And then we're talking decades of these habits. And the compounding effect of decades of eating at 9 o'clock, or one last bit of supper, at 9:30 at night, 10 o'clock at night, and I would like to say that when it comes to food, and that leads us into the other main area of brain health, which is inflammation, which you touched on, inflammation and stress, because I kind of see them as the same thing, really, because stressors of any
Mhm.
kind create inflammation. So stress and inflammation, you want to kind of see them
Mhm.
as two sides of the same coin. But for stress and inflammation for the brain, in terms of what we eat in our gut health, then the four biggest inflammatory foods are sugar, gluten, dairy, and red meat. And then, but there's three big inflammatory aspects for the brain and of the foods. Alcohol and sugar are two of the three biggest inflammatory stressors for the brain and for cognitive health. And so alcohol particularly, we do this whole so many units a week. And people go, oh, I only have one drink a day. But if you have gin o'clock at 6 o'clock, or G&T, gin o'clock, as my mum calls it, at 6 o'clock every night for decades, you're basically bringing in an inflammatory setting, for your brain every single day. So actually, I would make an argument. Well, the argument is always less is better, but
Mhm.
zero is best, frankly. But again, we've got to be realistic, and we've got to go with where we're at and what works for us. But definitely when it comes to alcohol, that's another big sugar container, and spiker and real role, and it's one of the hardest ones. The hardest one for me to get people to change and develop healthier habits around is exercise. Once someone is over 50, that creates the biggest barriers. We do it, but I'll be
Mhm.
honest, it usually requires some tough stuff. But then the second is alcohol and changing
Mhm.
pattern behavior and habits around alcohol. Yet those two behaviors for your brain health offer you the biggest bang for buck. So even just doing 10% more activity a day, an extra couple of hundred steps a day. Remember, 1%, 1%.
Tiny, tiny is mighty.
And then the same with
Tiny.
alcohol. So maybe you only drink when you go out, not at home. So you stop buying
Mhm.
it in the supermarket. So these are the kinds of things that for brain health, we really need to focus on reducing those inflammatory and gut inflammation, foods and items.
Yes, and we used to think, oh, we'll have some resveratrol in our wine. We'll get an antioxidant by drinking the wine. Well, you can also just eat grapes if you want that, but it's not the resveratrol that they are looking for. They're looking for the alcohol. So there's been lots of studies, and we used to think like, oh, I have a glass of wine, that's okay. We'll have that every now and then, and it might be for some people. But I'm sorry, Loma Linda, Loma Linda University in California. It's the home of a lot of people that call themselves Seventh-day Adventists. Um, it's a Christian organization, and they are raised not to eat meat, have any coffee, no smoking, and no alcohol intake. So there is a whole group of people that are such good research subjects because they've been adhering to this standard since they were little. So it's when they test them and they look at like different levels within their in their blood and whatever, they have really come to the conclusion that there's no amount of alcohol that actually is good for you. If you feel a buzz that like, oh, I'm so relaxed now. Oh, you're actually killing brain cells.
Yeah, and I would argue that Dan Buettner, fame of the
Hmm.
Blue Zones fame, really
Hmm.
amazing researcher, and I love his work. But
Hmm.
he stood up there very recently and is still it's clinging to this. Oh, alcohol and red wine is one of the key habits of the health span habits for Blue Zone, especially Italy and those zones, Sardinia
Hmm.
and that. I would argue it isn't the alcohol. It's the social connection that happens around
Yes.
alcohol that gives the brain benefits and brain protective
Hmm.
habit is the social connection because the number one predictor of longevity and health span, like quality of life, is your social connections and the quality and diversity, always that word in nature,
Hmm.
diversity of the number of types and kinds of relationships. It's not just about having really great best friends or loving partners. It's also about whether you chat to the person at the supermarket or the gas station
Yes.
and whether you engage and connect and you're open to being with other humans. And that is really powerful for our brain and for cognitive health, and especially when we talk about dementia and Alzheimer's, because it is so much about the decline of our communication capabilities. And by remaining and putting ourselves in funky social situations where our brain has to like do a few gymnastics to think, oh, what do I say? Oh, no. Well, that's what really creates this strength, if you like. The gym for the brain is social connection, and so really, and that will also help you with the whole stress reduction and meaning for life, and especially as we age. I saw it time and time again. I supported patients who had some of the most complex of health conditions. But if they had good friends, family, and social connections and things that they liked about their day and their life, do you know what? They really still saw their life as a very, worthwhile cause and vibrant. Whereas somebody else might not have the same health condition but feels very lost and isolated. So isolation, loneliness, these are true silent cognitive killers. And so we really need to work on our habits to to get out there and get amongst folks.
Yes. And we've gone a little over time here. And so what I'm wondering is, does anyone have any questions? Because we covered so much stuff. We've been doing this for a long time. So it just kind of rolls out. And we sometimes think that because we've known it for a long time that other people do, but I know other people have questions. So you can also unmute yourself, and you also can type in the chat. So you can do either things, whatever you like. If you have any questions that you, and also too, you can ask us questions on LinkedIn as well later if you want to just send us a message like, I understood you say to so and so, what does that like really mean? We're also available that way. So anybody have any questions? You can unmute, you can type in the chat, whatever you'd like to do. So there you are. Anybody like to ask a question? Thank you so much coming from Ireland to join us. Yes, Maureen, where are you from? Can you hear me? Can you chat? I don't know. I can't tell you. Some people don't like to be on video. That's okay. Um, hey, Carol.
Hello.
Hey there. There you are. There you are.
I have
You
to
have some
tell you
questions?
that the three of us that are here, we're all related. So
Good.
my mummy is Linda and my auntie is Maureen, who won't be turning on the video
Mhm,
or speaking.
mhm, mhm.
But she's awesome. I love you. I love you. Um, and I just wanted to speak. I don't have a question because the
Mhm.
honest truth is that I have been floating in and out of listening to this because I have two little kids running around and I've been trying to make dinner.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm
Mhm.
so delighted that this is recorded because I really want to go back on this and take notes. I sat down initially and I had a book and a pen, and then I ended up, I'm standing here with a flute stand in my hand and a swimming bag. So that's how it's ended.
Well,
Oh,
that is so delightful. I'm going to stop recording right now, and then you can continue to ask us any questions if you like.